Hey, what's up, good people? It's Rob Lee. So here's the information again for my future websites and one that's already done. I know you guys get tired of seeing it, but however, most of the time, the core of the channel, the few thousand people, sometimes half only get their notifications, and it may go a couple weeks and the other half don't get theirs. And I've talked to some people by phone, and certain people haven't gotten a notification in absolutely weeks. And this is the way it is. You guys know that I'm censored. I'm censored because I tell the truth. I'm going to continue to tell the truth. Death is very serious. Some people are afraid of it, but it is a reality. And disease is very real. So I do not want anybody to think that I am making light of disease. But we do need to talk about some of the hoaxes that have come in the medical industry, because they are incredibly gross and they have been forced upon the American people. And one of the grossest of all is AIDS. But before we get into that deeper, let me say something. We all are going to die. Well, there will be some that will actually live. If you're alive when Jesus Christ is, when He comes, then you will be changed in the twinkling of an eye, and you will not ever actually have to taste death. If you can be loyal until death, you will receive a crown of life. Let's move forward. The truth is like rain, man. When it falls, it's going to hit you. It doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. I showed you guys a picture of the Mandalay Bay incident, and I put a picture of it of a dummy. And there was a picture of that I told you of some cops and some people, and there was a dummy on the ground. And many people said that they missed it, that they didn't see it, but I think it's symbolic of the country that we live in North America and even Europe, Scandinavia, Australia. This is how blatant it is, that they can say or do anything to us and they can get away with it. It's problem, reaction, solution, paradigm. They will create a problem, a lie, and convince you to let them fix it. And the monsters who create the hell are the ones who fix it, and they will charge you for the problem that they created. And I'm talking about AIDS. And we're going to blow this wide open. Just bear with me. Something that has been forced upon the American people for almost 40 years, and it's a lie from the bowels of hell. It's pushed by Hollywood, and it is pushed by movies, the entertainment industry. In 1993, a movie came out called And the Band Played On, HBO, of course, and this was nothing but a propaganda piece based on absolute bullshit. That's exactly what it was. And it doesn't matter if it's Hollywood or if it's the left or the right, because the news, quite frankly, is the same. They serve the same beast. We all know that. I may occasionally play a Tucker Carlson video, but anybody who knows what's really going on knows there's no difference between the left and the right. They serve the same master. They serve the same beast. So it doesn't matter if it's the mainstream media, if it's social media, if it's university, academia, the churches. They will push a hoax, they will push a lie quick. If it's in their best interest, they will do it. And this is about medicine. And we're going to be talking more about this because Jesus Christ actually talked about this quite a bit. He did. In Revelation 18, he talked about sorcery. I'm not going to get into it now, but I promise you that we will. Here's Magic Johnson. He is, and we're going to play a video. By the way, this is not just going to be me. Here's Magic Johnson. He has AIDS, or does he? He's giving blood. Sure he does. Follow the money, people. Here, let's read some quotes. This is from Dr. Lawrence Bradford, biologist. I am well convinced that HIV is harmless. Dr. Fabio Franchi, specialist, infectious disease. AIDS is not a disease at all. It is a government program. How about that, people? And what's behind all this? It's control, fear, control, and money. It kills our people because the dragon has been trying to destroy us forever. Hoax after hoax, lie after lie, and it's pushed by the media, and by the media, lie after lie. It's an easy equation to solve. We all have AIDS. This was started back in the 80s. Lies. This is Big Pharma, one of the grossest and most evil entities in this country. Let's go to the video. I appreciate you guys watching. God bless.
Transmission of HIV in California, and we recruited individuals who were infected with HIV. Then we recruited their sexual partners, and we looked at whether transmission in fact had occurred.
Padian runs a study. It's a 10-year study with the world's most virulent, terrifying sexually I mean, this thing jumps, off of penises into vaginas miles away. how many of them do you think, after 10 years, with the world's most terrifying, virulent, sexually transmitted disease, came up positive? Nobody. Nobody. Nobody who was negative came up positive.
California microbiologist Dr. Curry Mullis was awarded the Nobel Prize in 1993 for his development of one of the most widely used current techniques in molecular biology today, the PCR, or polymerase chain reaction. This revolutionary technique allows scientists to take a sample containing a very minute amount of DNA and replicate that DNA sequence until there are many copies. One of the first applications.
But our AIDS researchers now are getting neurotic if you ask them any questions. There was a time when I first started asking questions, all I wanted was, where are the papers? Just tell me the papers that you read that convinced you that HIV was the cause of AIDS, because I need to reference those papers in some of the, I was working on a test for HIV with PCR, and I needed to write a little report to the NIH to say, here's the progress we've made. And the first line of it was, HIV is the probable cause of AIDS. And I thought that was true. This is before I got involved. And I said, what's the reference for that quote? And I looked for it for about 2 or 3 years, and I never could find it. And by the end of 2 years, I'd ask everybody at every meeting that I'd gone to that talked about AIDS, I'd ask, you know, I'd look through every computer database. There is no reference. There is nobody who should get credit for that statement. Now, that's a pretty weird situation in science, where getting credit for a discovery is the most important thing in your life as a scientist. It's silly to hear people saying, you don't believe that HIV causes AIDS? You don't believe that? I mean, it's just a word, but it's a very, very important distinction. I think that you know, that's why, it's become a very emotional kind of thing, because people actually, they get personally committed to what really is a body of evidence that can be analyzed, you know, by lots of people, and at this point there's so much of it out there, nobody can really analyze it, all of it, but nobody can write a review of it that says HIV causes AIDS because of this. You know, if a postdoc were to write a review of their literature that showed without much doubt that HIV was the cause of AIDS, that guy would be famous. Now, there's 100,000 guys out there who have the opportunity. 10 years has passed. We've been waiting for this star postdoctoral fellow to distinguish himself forever and get a lifelong grant from Tony Fauci, but he hasn't shown up. No one has bothered to write a definitive review. Any journal would take it. That right there proves that HIV does not cause AIDS. Just because Bob Gallo gets up, takes his sunglasses off and says, gentlemen, you discovered the cause of AIDS. That's all we have. New York Times article, CDC report, that's all we have.
Now, it's interesting, a lot of questions are asked of me whenever I appear before the cameras and do what some people have called a stunt, to sell books. I'm from the planet Earth. I honestly believe that these individuals are from the planet Uranus. How anyone could suggest that I would stick myself with a virus that is supposedly deadly for the purpose of selling a book, that's complete insanity. And I will put the lie to the individuals of the NIH, particularly Gallo and Fauci and Hazeltine and Essex and the rest of these scoundrels of the worst order. Criminals guilty of genocide, without a doubt. I invite them to take me to court. I wish Burroughs Wellcome would take me to court, because they have been putting out a killer drug knowingly. Because in a court of law, I would have the opportunity to provide the absolute proof and evidence, as I have in my book, Deadly Deception. Now, I'm not alone in what I'm doing here today. How does the press escape such obvious truths? Why would the finest virologist in the world, the most noted virologist, member of our National Academy of Sciences, Peter Duesberg, why would he put his entire career on the line? What did he have to gain? He's already lost his laboratory and his funding. They can't take away his professorship because he's tenured. Why would a Charles A. Thomas, professor emeritus of Harvard, say the same thing? Why would Kary Mullis, who won the Nobel Prize in virology last year, why would he stick his neck out? What did he have to gain? These are the questions reporters should be asking. And in order to sell a book, I would inoculate myself with a virus that supposedly is deadly. Ever think that maybe we all know something that you just don't get? That if you take the virus out of the equation, you have a perfectly understandable disease with a perfectly understandable answer. And I might remind you, in case you are not aware of it, and if you haven't read my book, that we have known what causes acquired immune deficiency diseases for at least 70 years. It's in the medical textbooks. It's there for you to read. Number one cause on the face of this earth is malnutrition and starvation. That's African. Look to the headlines of the October 3rd issue of the London Times, Sunday Times last year. And the inside headlines that screamed across 2 pages, the plague that never was. Speak to Philip and Evelyn Kreinen, who head Partage with an organization of 250 people, their own hospital, their own doctors, their own laboratories, who have lived in the heart of the epidemic, supposedly, or the supposed epidemic, for 5 years. There is no epidemic. It doesn't exist. They are there. They're not some character who goes through from the World Health Organization and says, oh, I've seen the people dying. Of course you have. We all saw them on television in Somalia. What do you think you were looking at? That was AIDS, due to starvation, due to malnutrition. It's no big secret what's causing AIDS. We've known it for 70 years. Number 2 is drugs. And don't just think of street drugs. Because the number one cause of AIDS today is actually 2 medical drugs. AZT, a drug that was discovered in the 60s as a chemotherapeutic drug for cancer and was shelved because it was too toxic to treat cancer. A drug worse than cancer is being used to treat people who are immunosuppressed. Now let's go back to the other causes of AIDS. So it's not only street drugs but medical drugs, but now 3 is radiation. What do they worry about at Chernobyl and Nagasaki and Hiroshima? But number 4 is chemotherapy. Number 4. The number 4 cause of death of acquired immune deficiency diseases. Chemotherapy. And the most toxic chemotherapeutic drug of all times, AZT, is what they're now using to treat AIDS. And the Concord study, completed last year. Now, can you imagine saying to the world, where was the press? Where are you people? Here they're giving a drug that costs thousands of dollars a year, and it doesn't do any good? That's if you want to believe that. But did anybody here bother to look at the insert, the paper that comes with the drug? It's a DNA terminator. It means it is a terminator, just like the movie. It terminates life. You terminate DNA, you terminate life. And they talk about side effects in the insert. When are you going to learn there is no such thing as a side effect in medicine? It's an unwanted direct effect. And you know what one of the unwanted direct effects of AZT is? Lymphoma, cancer, one of the diseases of AIDS, as they call it. Oh, another so-called side effect, which is really an unwanted direct effect, pancytopenia. You need a definition? Pancytopenia. Pan, all, cyto, cells, penia, loss of all your cells. That's AIDS. That is the definition of AIDS. So AZT, by definition, by their own drug insert, causes AIDS, and nobody survives AZT. That will eventually lead to your death. And they've cut the dosage way down because it was killing them too fast. It's like giving somebody a large dose of strychnine and they die within 5 minutes. And so the next person, you give them a few drops of it and they last 4 or 5 days, and you say, strychnine's a wonderful drug. This person lasts 5 times longer. This is the kind of thing that they present to the world. Now, I have offered for over a year now, and I continue to offer it, $100,000 to anyone who will give me one scientific document that proves that HIV causes any serious disease. It doesn't. It is a scandal and a scam beyond belief. The virologists who are responsible for this, what do they have to gain? Now, I don't know what Duesberg had to gain, or Charles A. Thomas, or Kary Mullis. He already got his Nobel Prize. Why does he come out and say it? And he's the one that found the test.
In 1992, I was encouraged by a doctor to take what's called an HIV test as a matter of social responsibility. And I was shocked and devastated and horrified when the results came back positive. It was one of those moments that everyone fears their whole life. A week later, I take the same test to an AIDS specialist. He looks and says, "This isn't a positive test. I don't know what this test means."
Since a false positive looks like a true positive, how can you ever distinguish whether it's truly a positive or a negative?
Well, that's a great question. It's going to be very hard to determine a false positive.
So I take the test again, and this time my results come back marked from the lab indeterminate. I'm faced with the decision, do I want to wait 6 weeks to test again or do it right away? I opted for right away. My results that time come back positive. Took it again, came back negative. I took it again, positive.
If we were talking about reality, the reality is that AIDS is over.